So here's kind of how I became interested in the occult and Satanism. When I was around 7 or 8 years old, when I first started to be able to read for myself, I got into comic books, and I loved Tales of the Crypt and Vault of Horror, and that series of comics. And I read those, and they always had like kind of a supernatural twist, kind of a dark humor, in their comics, and I loved them. I couldn't get enough of them. And I was raised in a Catholic home, not strictly Catholic. My parents were separated or divorced, whatever. And I'd visit my father every other weekend and 6 weeks in the summer, shit like that. And he's a strict Roman Catholic, great man, good man, Irish lad, red hair, little beady green eyes, and anyway, very Catholic. And so he would take me to church every fucking Sunday. And even young, I didn't like church. It was creepy. I didn't like the ceremonies. It bothered me. I didn't like the people holding hands. I didn't know people. I didn't want to hold your fucking hand. I didn't like when they passed around the basket. You had to put money in it. I never took communion. Was never baptized. Never took communion. It was just creepy. I didn't like those creepy priests. The whole environment was just alien and foreign and made me feel uncomfortable and anxiety. So I didn't really like it, but at the same time I was young and and I was looking for an identity, and I admired my father, so I tried my best to go to church and to follow through with that. And by the time I was, say, 12, I just stopped. I refused to go. It just got so awkward that I didn't like to go, and no coincidence, it kind of correlated with sexual development and maturity. My interests were longing outward, not up in a heavenly sense or a spiritual sense. My interests were mundane and carnal, and I didn't want to get up at fucking Sunday at 7 a.m. I'd rather stay in bed and watch cartoons or eat popsicles or whatever. I lost interest in church immediately. Then I also started reading a lot about vampires and werewolves. I was fascinated with these monsters, more so werewolves than vampires. I read a book on lycanthropy, and it talked about how to change yourself into a werewolf. And one of the pages I read said something to the effect of, if you have to sleep in the light of the full moon, and then you have to drink water out of the paw print of a wolf. So I did that. I was about 12 years old. I did that. I snuck out of my house when there was a full moon. I slipped up on the roof, and there was a canal, a dry wash, a couple miles down from my house. The next day I rode my bicycle down there, and not really knowing if there were really wolves in Phoenix, which there's not, I saw paw prints. And I assumed that they were wolves because I was fascinated with wolves. And they're probably dog paw prints. And there was no water in them because it was Arizona and it's dry and hot as fuck, but there were paw prints. And so I poured water in them, and then I drank the water out of the paw print in the dirt. And later I turned into a golden retriever, not a werewolf. Nah, I'm joking. But anyway, yeah, I was really fascinated with werewolves, and I started watching the Howling movies, and Silver Bullet was another great one. And so I kind of started to get interested into the occult and the supernatural in that sense. When I was 13, I ran away from home, and I met up with this guy that was like he's probably 17, 18 at the time, and he was a vagabond. He was couch surfing, and I bumped into him, and he carried around a satanic Bible. And this guy was like hardcore punk misfits. He had like big thick black eyeliner, dreadlocks, coming down and whatnot. And I was fascinated by the Satanic Bible. I was like, what's that? And of course my perception of Satanism was, about devil worshiping and killing animals and stuff like that, as is everyone's who doesn't actually take the time to look into it. And I read the book. He gave the book to me and said, hey, read this. And I read it, and it made a lot of fucking sense. I felt kind of a revelation of sorts that, for the first time in my life, I could identify with a group of individuals that felt the same way I did. And an interesting point is Satanists are born, not made. You don't make yourself or convert to Satanism. you're a Satanist from the get-go, and as you evolve in your life, you know, you find a correlation and a connection with these people and this philosophy. So that's kind of how I became a Satanist, you know. And I was so enthusiastic and impressed by what I had read in the Satanic Bible at the age of 13 that I used to carry around the Satanic Bible in school. And this was back in early 90s, and it was not okay to do that. You know, I got suspended from school. You know, my mom had to come down and pick me up, and luckily my mom was really open-minded, and although did not like me carrying around the Satanic Bible, she disliked more the fact that the school would punish me for it. So she was cool in that sense. But yeah, that's kind of how I became interested in the occult and in Satanism. And once I read the Satanic Bible, I continued to read Anton LaVey's books, The Satanic Witch, Satan Speaks, Devil's Notebook, Secret Life of the Satanist, Church of Satan, so on and so on, Satanic Rituals. And then I started to devour the books in the Satanic Witch and the bibliography, which is, I recommend for any Satanist, because that is, you know, really shows you what, how in depth the philosophy of Satanism and the geniusness of Anton LaVey really is. So that's kind of where I started.